use cases connecting to financial activities, financial services.
Maybe I'll add one more thing actually. This is where you were talking about more like financial type applications. I think one of the key drivers or potential hurdles is going to be the regulation, right? That could either accelerate the adoption or greatly slow it down. So I think this next year or two is going to be decisive in terms of the regulation.
I mean, I'm glad you brought that up because my next question is, what kind of major reforms do you kind of foresee, especially in your different industries? I mean, we have a variety up here. What do you forecast for any reforms that are going to make major changes?
Sure, I'll start. So, at least for Hong Kong, I actually think we're in a really good spot in terms of the regulator here because they get it, they understand technology, and they're very much not only a participant, but they're actually help driving the digitization of the banks in Hong Kong. I think many of them are still very much paper-based in how they operate, and many of their core banking systems haven't been fully modernized, not upgraded. There's inefficiencies all over the place, and the HKMA is actually doing a really good job in pushing the banks to modernize, and you need that to actually have a really fully functioning and effective and efficient blockchain. So through their, the open APIs with the first phase that's launching in January, the virtual banks that are coming into the forces, there's some really interesting digital initiatives, and the E-Trade Connect as well, which the HKMA was behind. They're really helping to push that. So you need that level of support and understanding from the regulators and actually to make some real profound changes.
Yeah, so I'll say some of the reform we're going to see is we're going to see the business, they will be more open in terms of their infrastructure, their system, their data, because actually this is the trend, because when you go to any conferences, even traditional industry, everybody's talking about digitalization and internet and trend exchange, creating an ecosystem or creating a platform, and blockchain is the technology to facilitate that, to enable the enterprises to open up their data or open up their platform in a way that they can the different parties can trust the data, and by exchanging the data, you can actually monetize the data that you exchange, because you own the data. When you share it, and you have to get rewarded. And blockchain is the very good technology to facilitate that this kind of data exchange and creating an open platform.
I think we've seen some really promising developments this year. I would say the initial reaction from regulators has been kind of epidermic, like, okay, this is bad, reject. Certain countries have done that and are still kind of in that mode, but coming from jurisdictions like Singapore, where the MAS is putting in sandbox framework and trying to help blockchain projects get banked, which is still kind of a hurdle. I think that's really going in the right direction. Also, Hong Kong this year releasing the new guidelines in terms of regulating crypto exchanges and crypto funds. I think that's also really going in the right direction of really putting in a framework in place. And there's an opportunity here for certain countries to kind of lead the charge. I think later on, others will follow.
I think reform is a pretty strong word. It's probably we're going to see more evolution than revolution. I think, and before you want to have a reform, and people have to see the value of the reform. And that's why, like, you don't fix something that's actually working pretty well. It's not, I mean, probably not the best way it can be done. But if it works, then don't fix it. It's the same, right? And same thing for blockchain. If you want to kind of have a reform, you have to at least start to show promises. And the regulators are pretty smart, and they understand the market, and they're risk averse to a certain degree. And if you just have some proposal saying this is better, and we have to change some of the rules, then if there are others on the other side saying, hey, I can do exactly the same thing with a database or business rules engine. Oh, by the way, smart contract is not any more efficient than business rules engine. I think anybody in the computer science industry know that. So I think that the thing is really about decentralization, but do you really need to change rules to actually enable decentralization? I don't know the answer to that question. But I do believe that before we see revolution, before we need a revolution, we need first to experience the evolution. So before there will be reform, we should be seeing promises. Yeah, I think that's.
Well, in terms of that, what do you think would push this for anyone? Would push that so-called like revolution?
I'm just going to follow because I think back to my previous comment is promises, saying why doing things this way is really better than doing things in the other way. Because I said earlier in my talk, I said if you just say if you're doing using blockchain, you can have an immutable proof of record, then that's not a good enough argument. Because I can do that with digital signature. It's super reliable, easy, and efficient. And it's been there for 30 years, it's proven. And if your argument is saying it's improved efficiency, then is it really better than business rules engine? Really, right? And if you're talking about traceability of record, is it really better than database? Seriously. I feel before you see the reforms, you gotta show promises. To promise the reform will actually bring the better world.
Yeah, I agree. I think you just need more and more examples to come to the fore for people to really understand the real value of it, to actually push forward, and for the small businesses. I think that's really where you'll see the growth, is when the small businesses really embrace it and they understand the value of it for their companies. That's when I think you're going to really see a sea change globally in terms of adoption.
So in terms of adoption then, in your specific industry, what resources are kind of needed, like specifically?
I'm not really sure it's the resources needed, it's the scenario that's actually needed. It's actually the true story that's going to drive the revenue that's needed. Because by the end of the day, I do believe the revenue story is always better than the cost story.
So you don't think that it's necessarily resources?
I think the resources is the easy part, because you can always train people, you can always find people. You're not creating a new area in science, so you can always find people and train people and prepare people. So it's more about the value proposition.
I think for us it is a resource thing in terms of talent. DBS is very much known for hiring engineers, and I think that's got to be a push for all the banks. You need to hire just as many engineers as you have bankers, if not more, if you really want to become a modern financial institution. So for us, it's really the training and the focus on that engineering talent is really important.
I think if you talk about resources, I think what we need, the whole industry need is a better awareness, a better education about the value of this technology, I think, to a broader audience. Because I think especially people not in this space, not actually involved in the space, their attention was kind of dragged into the basically looking at the market, the volatility of the market. Everybody is just, when people talking about blockchain, they only think about the crypto market. But we need to, there's a lot of education work to do to the broader audience, not just the investors in the crypto space, but like normal consumers, normal normal business enterprises. And this is one thing, and the other thing is to have a clear regulatory compliance and industry standards. I think that's what I mentioned before. So for enterprise, they can have a clear guide to follow when it comes to this kind of new technology.
I'm gonna go back to my previous point about the technology readiness. I think we need more protocols that are plug and play, more like modular components that projects can build on, and then instead of focusing on like reinventing the blockchain, they can focus on product.
Gotcha. Well then let's look at 2019 outlook. I guess, what are some investment opportunities that you think that everyone should be looking out for?
I'll take that one. Well, as I mentioned earlier, I'm really interested in the payments and the financial area because I think this is like the most basic use case that we need to nail down first, and then there's a really true opportunity in the emerging markets in particular to bypass, the current banking infrastructure. So that's an area that I'm very interested in. And we're seeing the fundraising trends change a lot. ICOs have now gone mostly institutional and not a lot of retail investors anymore. And then we're seeing a rise of STOs, and there's still a lot of uncertainty around it, but it's something that's happening that we need to be ready for. It's not a magic wand, not going to solve every problem. I think really you have to look at the fundamentals of each project, and I'm seeing a lot of more and more interesting ones. So I think even if the markets are not very stable yet, I'm quite reassured that the quality of the projects is getting better. I'm seeing more teams that come from a traditional finance background that really kind of get what the institutions need and want. So I think that's quite reassuring because they can anticipate the direction in which the regulations are going and then they can get the market. So yeah, I think there's really good things going on right now in terms of investment opportunities.
Yeah, for us, we actually look more, not in terms so much of investment in companies, but actually partnering with companies. So my team, one of the things that we run is our startup exchange. It's an accelerator. We brought it in-house this year. So we're doing the whole thing end-to-end ourselves. And it's really identifying those new technologies and companies that have a different way of looking at things that we may not have thought of ourselves. Or they can do it more efficiently, faster, cheaper than we could do it ourselves. So we really use our Startup Exchange program to test out new technologies in very short POCs. We try to limit them to a couple of months so that we can just take a run at something in a very cost-effective way, get them on board quickly, and try it out. So that's something we're always doing. It's just a matter of constant experimentation for us.
I think I agree. I gotta agree because certainly I'm not someone who actually gonna invest money into blockchain initiatives. But I do see there may be less cash available, and also the investors are getting smarter because people are more or less more educated about what blockchain is and what are the promises and what are not. So if there's something that has a good value proposition, I totally agree with you. You gotta do this as a case-by-case thing. But if you can bring good value proposition to investors, I think there will be opportunities.
In terms of like investment, I only you can see kind of like two things happening at the same time. The first is the market is kind of in the winter. I think last night a friend of mine, he would like to refer this as a nuclear winter, and it's maybe going to last longer. But on the other hand, like Sabrina just mentioned, like a lot of the traditional big venture capitals are trying. They are very actively looking at opportunity to invest in this industries. Like Coinbase has a huge valuation even before they are seeking going public. So there's a lot of opportunity here. Like during this winter time, yeah, a lot of projects may die, but like it's actually a good period of time for projects to really get their head down and really work on the products, so you don't get distracted by the market that much. So as long as you can create a product that can be used by a broader audience, then those projects will be worth investing.
So I think this will be the last question, seeing as we're approaching our time. We've kind of talked a little bit about education and, you know, who do you think that falls on more in terms of getting people to kind of understand like the use of blockchain? Is it these companies or kind of the people investing in these companies? Like, who should be really pushing education at this point?
I honestly think that for the end user, it doesn't really matter that much, right? I think you should just focus on like good products, and you don't really need to understand how it's working under the hood. As long as you get, you get value out of a product or a service. So I think we should focus the education more on, more on the B2B, on the companies that are going to build their services or products based on blockchain.
I think in terms of education, like everybody should be doing that. But I agree with Sabrina that maybe the best education is to create the product that can be used widely by the end consumer. Then automatically, maybe the end consumer, maybe when they're not even aware that they're using blockchain when they're using this kind of product, but later on they think, oh, this is kind of innovative product because I can do certain things that's not possible in the previous solution, and then later on they will start to learn, oh, why is that? Because the technology working behind that. So yeah, I think we really need to work on the user experience, because at the current stage, for lots of the DApp, in order to use that, there's, I think for normal people who's not familiar with crypto, they're going to stop at probably the first step, because in order to use that, you need to first get a wallet and memorize your keys, and then later on you realize that before you're using any function, you need to purchase cryptocurrency. I think for normal people, they're just going to stop there. So we need to provide a better user experience to let normal people to start using the blockchain-based applications.
I think I stick to my original line, is that it's about value proposition. So obviously, companies going to is going to take the lead role in educating the customer. They're not going to really educate the customers. So first of all, so imagine when eBay first came online 15 years ago, or 20 years ago, or when Yahoo first came online 20 years ago, or Google first came online, people didn't know what that is. I mean, if you have a good product, then people will automatically get educated, and then people will feel it, because if people cannot feel it, they cannot feel it, then it's probably not a good use case after all. Because so for E-Trade Connect, for example, you got a different bank have a different platform, and so some people know that. People don't know these things. And if you have a good value, by the end of the day, you have a good value, then the customer is going to get educated automatically. You don't need to spend time, just like how eBay get collaborated, how Amazon get collaborated, how Google is becoming part of everyday life. It's becoming a bird itself.
Well, yeah, I think we've reached our time. I just want to thank you guys all for being up here. If anyone has any closing remarks, feel free. If not,
All right, thank you so much. And would everyone please stand up and take a group photo first? Thank you very much for coming.